If you're one of the people who believe that they will accomplish their dreams because of how motivated they are, then you're simply wrong. Almost anything that is worth accomplishing takes a lot of time to achieve. While motivation only lasts for a few days at most, habits, once built, stay your whole life. That's why, instead of relying on motivation, you have to create the right habits to become successful. So what is a habit? How do habits work? And more importantly, how can you change a bad habit into a good one? Let's start off at the beginning. What is a habit? A habit is an automatic process that becomes internalized through repetition. At one point in your life, you made the deliberate decision to do something. That could be anything from eating to studying or going to your workplace or school. Right away, there are two important things about habits. First, they are automatic. That means they drain no willpower or motivation. When a habit emerges, the brain stops fully participating in the decision-making process. It stops working so hard or diverts focus to another task. So unless you deliberately fight a habit, the pattern will unfold automatically. And second, they become stronger every time you repeat them. Unlike most people believe, it doesn't actually take 21 days to form a habit. For the average person, it takes 66 days. From the point on where you created a new habit, it becomes easier and easier to pull off every time you do it. So now that you have a rough sense of what a habit is, let's talk about how habits work. Every habit follows a simple formula. First, there is a cue. This cue is like a trigger for the habit. Then what follows is the routine. The routine is the visible part of any habit. The last component of any habit is the reward. The reward marks the end of the habit. So let's say you get something to eat every time you're hungry. In this case, you being hungry is the cue for the habit. The routine would be getting something to eat, and the reward is a dopamine rush that you get from eating the food. Even though this is just a very simple example, the same structure applies to all habits. Understanding this is extremely important if you want to change an old habit. The author of the book, The Power of Habit, speaks of a golden rule for changing habits. If you use the same cue and provide the same reward, then you can shift the routine and change the habit. Almost any behavior can be transformed if the cue and the reward stay the same. So changing an old habit first requires you to know the whole habit loop. Don't worry, you don't have to figure out your habit loops on your own. There is a 4-step process for transforming a habit. The first step is also the easiest one. Identify the routine. As I mentioned before, the routine is the visible part of any habit. Since the routine is pretty obvious most of the time, you should be able to identify it right away. The second step is a bit more tricky. Every time you notice that you follow the routine from step 1, change it a little bit. Let's say your routine was that you stand up from your workplace, go to the cafeteria, buy a cookie, and then eat it while chatting with your friends. In this case, you cannot be sure what the reward for your habit was. So the next time you feel the urge to eat a cookie, you could try to go for a short walk and then go back to your workplace without buying anything. Eat an apple instead, or buy the cookie, but then eat it alone at your workplace. Every time you change the routine, wait for 15 minutes and ask yourself, do I still need a cookie? If the answer is yes, then you repeat the whole process. But if the answer is no, then you have just successfully identified your reward. Once you know what the reward is, you can go on to the third step. Experiments have shown that almost all cues fall into one of 5 categories: location, time, emotional state, other people, and immediately preceding actions. So if you're trying to figure out the cue for your habit, you have to write down 5 things every time the urge hits. Where are you? What time is it? What's your emotional state? Who else is around you? And what immediate action preceded the urge? It won't take long until you find out what your cue is. Once you've figured out your habit loop, it's time to make a change. As I already said before, a habit is a choice you deliberately make at some point and then stop thinking about, but still continue doing. The power of habit describes a habit as a formula. When I see the cue, I will do the routine in order to get the reward. To re-engineer that formula, you have to start making choices again. The easiest way to do so is by having a plan. Let's take the cookie example from before. If the cue in that example was the time around 3 o'clock and the reward the temporary distraction from your work, then your plan could look like this. Every day at 3 o'clock, I will stop working and chat with my friends for 10 minutes. In order to remember your plan, you can set a timer for 3 o'clock. It probably won't work immediately, but don't get discouraged from that. The more often you practice your new habit, the easier it will become to follow. And one additional tip. It's no problem if you fail to follow your habit for one day, but make sure that you don't miss it for more than one day at a time. The chances for you adopting a new habit fall exponentially with every additional day you miss it. So if you can't manage to follow the habit, make sure it is your number one priority on the next day. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching. If you did, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend or a person that could need it. Anyways, I wish you an awesome day and keep on improving.